Everyone knows that a gold medal at the Olympics is the most distinguished piece of hardware a track and field athlete can possess. 4 years of intense preparation goes into each cycle of these games, where the hyper-competitive, international talent continues to push the boundaries of the sport as a whole. There are countless examples of athletes heroically pulling through with the performance of a lifetime, but there are also, of course, the tragically close blunders that relinquish their years of work in just a matter of seconds. There's also a really bizarre but not entirely impossible third route these stories can go, though. What if a competition is designed in such a way that the athletes can tie in every way possible? And what if they could also propose such a specific, alternative resolution to the tie that it would result in one of the most historical moments in sports history? But we need to go just a few years back if we want to find out where this exactly originated. Before that, though, we need to explain what events can reasonably tie and what happens when they do. If you're already familiar with these concepts, then simply proceed to this timestamp. In most events in track and field, they'll normally produce marks that are so specific that a tie would be almost impossible. Not to say there aren't exceedingly rare cases that do happen, but even then there are rules in place to resolve them. In a select few field events, however, aka the pole vault and the high jump, there are very specific heights every athlete has to clear in order to progress throughout the event. Naturally, you can kind of see how these events are much more susceptible to ties, and while there is a history of bronze and silver medals being shared plenty of times at major championship events, this is almost non-existent when it comes to a gold medal. Why? Well, obviously, as a competitor, you want to be the one to possess such hardware. But the other reason is that there are rules set in place to settle these types of ties in case they do happen. The most common one is the countback rule. Say up until this point you and your opponent have cleared every height on your first try. In your 3 attempts at the winning height though, you got it on your second attempt, but your opponent got it on their first. Since your opponent cleared the last height with less attempts, they simply win the tiebreaker on the countback rule. What happens though if the athletes tie on every single height and they can't clear the next height? We'll get to that soon, but for now let's take a gander at the 1908 Olympics pole vault. Pole vaulting back in the early 1900s was a little different. Let's just say the luxury of landing on a soft surface was a sandpit at best, and that you were more reliant on your skills than ever if you didn't want to end up in the hospital the next day. Sure, they weren't clearing Mondo Duplantis level heights, but this definitely didn't look like the safest event back then, especially when the event's world record holder's mom doesn't even want you competing because of it. I did try looking everywhere for the full list of vaults that led to the eventual results, but not even in the official report from 1908 seemed to have much to offer. With that said though, there is a bit of build-up documented. Ed Cook from the US cleared a height of 371 in the qualifying rounds, while other American AC Gilbert followed right behind with a 366 clearance. Gilbert was able to replicate Cook's skill level in the finals, getting over 371 himself for the gold medal. But wait a minute, how and why are they tied? He didn't clear this height in the finals at all. Well, the way the pole vault worked back then was that if you happened to have cleared your best height during the qualifiers, it would actually transfer over to the finals. But what about the tie? Surely there had to be something in place even back then. While a jump-off solution was set in place for this reason, the marathon was just finishing up during the high jump, which happened to be ending inside the stadium. The roaring crowd allegedly proved to be far too hectic for the pole vault officials and competitors to deal with, so they simply just opted to hand the gold medals to both Gilbert and Cook, and 3 others all received bronze medals with tied marks of their own. Throughout the years, shared medals became less commonplace, where the concept of sharing a gold medal had proved to be a one-of-a-kind instance in athletics, which was mainly due to a lack of organization and structure for the sport back then. However, at the 2012 Olympics, 3 men had tied for silver in the high jump, which was something that hadn't been seen since, well, the 1908 ones. But at the postponed 2020 Tokyo Olympics, one of these athletes from the 2012 iteration would get himself entangled in yet another tiebreaker scenario, but would end up making a decision that would shock the entire world and would set a profoundly unique precedent for the sport moving forward. The Tokyo Olympics was by all accounts desolate. The crowd was virtually non-existent with only coaches and perhaps a few others allowed in the venue, and in a sport like the high jump, these athletes thrive off of getting the crowd pumped up. which in turn pumps them up to execute their best possible performance. Despite missing such an atmospheric component, the competition was more intense than ever. We start off with a clean streak from multiple athletes, but it quickly boils down to two who haven't missed a single jump yet by the 233 height, which are Mutaz Essa Barsham from Qatar and Gianmarco Tamberi from Italy. At 235, Tamberi and Barsham both clear the height first try yet again, while South Korea's Woo Sang-hyuk and Australia's Brandon Stark join the mix as well, the former which would tie his own national record. By 237, we run into a very interesting scenario here. Barsham easily clears it first, but Belarus's Maxim Nadesiko skipped 235 after failing it once, and went straight to 237, and impressively enough ties the national record and is now in contention to steal the show. Tamberi though refuses to let Barsham get a single leg up on him though, no pun intended, as his perfect streak also remains unbroken, meaning the two were tied by any means possible. At 239, we've approached a height that Tamberi has only cleared once in his life, but is something that Barsham has either cleared or surpassed on 14 separate occasions. However, Barsham's highest clearance since 2019 had been 237, but at the same time, Tamberi cleared 239 all the way back in 2016. In essence, these two were going to need the jump of a lifetime, because even if they had done so in the past, all recent numbers were pointing towards a miracle needing to happen to officially declare a winner. Quite a few others would stick around too, as those who couldn't clear 237 would use their remaining tries on some last hope 239 attempts. Most of the first attempts looked kinda rough, but Barsham and Tamberi's were respectable. Barsham's second attempt was much rougher around the edges though, as he began liftoff much earlier than usual, almost ramming his head into the bar. Sang-hyuk and Tamberi had valiant efforts on their further attempts, but the reality was that no one was likely getting over this height. Nadesiko out of nowhere though had a fantastic attempt on his last try, but would not only just miss out on a gold medal spot, but due to the countback rule, would ultimately finish with a bronze. It was all up to Tamberi now, a man who had never medaled at an international competition before, and was now just a few strides and one technically sound execution away from global glory.
If he fails at this attempt, we will go to a jump off. He comes close, but it's not. And he fails on his third attempt.
Gianmarco Tamberi would miss his final attempt, which meant that Barsham would be the winner. Hold on, that's not right. The two didn't miss a single jump up until 239, did they? No, yeah, that's correct, I guess. So, what now? Well, by all accounts, the two were dead tied, which meant that a jump-off was to be proposed. Like we said, this is similar to the countback rule, where the two could keep trying 239 until someone cleared it, or they would keep moving down heights until there was an eventual winner, even if it took the opening height to get to that point. The thing was, there was another alternative. Buried in the text of the World Athletics Rulebook, it states that if no jump-off is carried out, including where the relevant athletes at any stage decide not to jump further, the tie for first place shall remain. With that said, here's what Barsham ended up proposing to the official.
With the jump off,
Can we have 2 gold?
it's possible. It depends if you decide.
History, my friend.
If you both decide on
The champion. He's charismatic, he's a huge personality, and they will both taste gold in Tokyo.
And so we have the novel situation of turning to hear two national anthems here in the stadium.
Gianmarco Tamberi and Mutaz Essa Barsham were dual gold medalists at the Olympics. A first ever for Tamberi and another fantastic addition to Barsham's astounding portfolio. Given the last shared gold medal was over a century ago, and the circumstances that led to it were actually quite different, this was technically a one-of-a-kind moment for track and field history. As the old saying goes though, history is bound to repeat itself, because not even a couple years later, we would potentially run into the same exact situation yet again. Okay, this is not an Olympic championship, but come on, it's pretty damn close, and this is a competition absolutely worth talking about. The women's pole vault in 2023 was a bit difficult to predict, mainly due to the top women trading blows at various Diamond League events, but USA's Katie Moon had the least amount of variance by a decent amount in her season, making her the most likely candidate for the 2023 World Championships. During this competition, about half of the field was knocked out quickly, and some that are left are barely hanging on, setting new personal bests in the process. Up until this point, Virma Murto from Finland was the only one maintaining a clean streak of clearances, as she got over 450, 465, 470, and 480, all on her first attempt, while the rest had a slight blemish that could hurt them later if a countback were to happen, but nevertheless we have 6 women going into the next height. Given most of the clearances at 480 left no more than 6 or 7 centimeters, 485 was going to require a lot if they were already doing near max or max effort jumps. Murto struggles to maintain form on her first attempt, but Australia's Nina Kennedy incredibly pulls off the 485 on her first try, putting instant pressure on the rest of the field with a new national record. Moon diligently responds with a clearance of her own, but the rest of the field could not put anything together on all 3 of their attempts, eventually rendering Murto as Finland's first ever global medalist in the women's pole vault and diluting the field quickly to just the American and the Australian. As the bar is now set at 490, we've reached beyond untouched territory for Nina Kennedy at this point, but a height Moon has cleared plenty of times throughout her career. The first attempts between the two appeared to display a sense of fatigue, but the next ones reinvigorated some potential, with Kennedy getting solid height, but not enough horizontal momentum to get her torso over. Moon was even closer, but would hit the bar with her chest on the way down. In the least likely of scenarios going into the last jump between what has been an exhausting rendezvous, this is what would ultimately happen on their final attempts.
It's easy to look determined and positive when you're not in the last chance saloon. She does! Nina Kennedy, another national record, 3rd time clearance, she's over. Nina Kennedy lead, she's gone clear. Nina Kennedy was phenomenal. We saw the heartbreak at the previous attempt with the failure. The defending champion, the Olympic champion, Katie Moon, is next up. Her place in this competition, Katie Moon. Oh, what a champion. How Katie Moon goes clear, the competition goes on. These 2 women are inseparable.
To explain just how astounding this is for 2 women to clear this height in one competition, these 2 marks would land them in the top 10 all-time list for the event, and at this point Kennedy had single-handedly upped the Australian record by 8 centimeters. With that said though, 495 was the next height that would force the athletes to crumble in some fashion, but the 2 were going to try their best. Kennedy's first attempt is a bust, but Moon shows that she is capable of replicating her personal best by getting solid height, but couldn't quite get her upper body over the bar. The second attempt from both of them are much sloppier, which would ultimately leave them with one final jump yet again. Given the amount of grit it took them just to get over 490, 495 was frankly looking like a wash. The 2 were also entirely tied down to every specific clearance and fail, so if they were unable to clear this, they would have to make a decision that would either resemble the Tokyo Olympics high jump, or they could give the people the showdown of a lifetime by doing a jump off until one of them physically couldn't keep going anymore. They
are not going to have a jump off. We are going to have a joint silver medal in that. Great to show you every single jump of this fantastic final, and here is how it ended up. Nina Kennedy and Katie Moon share the gold medal for Australia and the United States, 4 meters 90.
In the end, Katie Moon and Nina Kennedy would share the gold medal, cementing this as the first time ever at a World Athletics Championship 2 athletes would do so. This is also the first time Kennedy has ever placed in a medal position at an international event, very akin to Tom Barry's situation at the Tokyo Olympics. Naturally, this occurrence spread like wildfire across major news outlets, as the fact that this happened not only once, but twice already across the only 2 events it could happen at starstruck sports fans across the world. Given the conditions that need to be met for this to ever happen again, the actual odds of this to occur within the next few years is very, very slim. If it does happen again, we may see the jump off that some had excitedly hoped for. Because as wholesome as this story was, people finding out about the jump off option actually rubbed some people the wrong way when they found out the medal was shared instead, as some believe that if a gold medal is to be won, it should simply belong to one athlete only, and the jump off does effectively force a tiebreaker to be broken, even if it takes them practically walking over the bar to determine a winner. Another consideration, however, is that if the two athletes are genuinely fried and simply don't see a productive reason to jump any further, then this shared medal rule does have some validity to it. Would it be worth risking your guaranteed gold medal spot if your competitor offered you to keep it? Especially if you were dead tired, most I'd imagine would likely hope to share that medal. Don't get me wrong, a jump off for an Olympic gold would mark one of the most theatrical and intense showdowns in sports history, but perhaps a more wholesome alternative can't hurt, especially when it's only happened twice in the last century. I do also wonder if we will ever see something similar happen again in the sprinting events like back in 2008, where Allyson Felix and Jenna Batarmo tied for an Olympic spot so closely that a runoff rule was made on the fly to resolve this 1 in a million occurrence. Regardless, there's plenty of years to come for something similar like this to occur, and for the people to witness a 1v1 UFC-style knockout bonanza where the two are pushing each other to the utter brim where they physically can't jump anymore. But for now, we should cherish the notion of competitors coming together and the way they show each other the utmost respect to the point where they'd even share a gold medal with them if given the option. And if you're not a fan of that, well, you know what, that's alright too.